Okay, so now we are live on YouTube. So hello and welcome everybody in the meeting and watching on YouTube to this webinar on space technology for sustainable development, particularly sustainable development goals, but that is till 2030. And we plan to keep our motto ignited until all problems in our societies are solved. So before we start, just a bit of introduction about the community and our speaker for the day. So Community Space One is a community of like-minded individuals willing to make change on the lines of sustainable development goals as set by the United Nations for 2030. Our mission is to empower youth and the torchbearers of change tomorrow with the right people and resources to make change using space technology and, more importantly, our artistic visual representation, because this is a part that will help us connect to the public. We are all techno-savvy people, most of us, I hope, in the meeting, and we all can understand the language of technology, but not everyone, not the common lay person. So for that, we also hope to invite artists to our group who can contribute on the artistic side of our social media campaign and to promote our motto. So um, there'll be primarily three teams in CSO. First is the tinkering team. So this is the team that works on the technical side, the creative people who design the solutions to the problems, to the SDGs, who work towards representing the data that is collected in a visual format, which is appealing to the public, and all those things. Next, we have a very important team. This is also very important. So ambassadors for change. These are the people who will communicate actually our data that we collect to the public by social media campaigns or sharing the posts and all these sorts of things. So these can be people who are activists in their own country and wish to use the data to identify problems, what is creating those problems in terms of sustainable development and the SDGs, and then we and the whole community will support their campaign. Now, finally, we have the mentoring team. So that includes experienced individuals, not only professors, but experienced individuals who are sort of, like mid-career people who can provide us the right guidance, who can provide us the right contacts to approach our solutions to the public and appeal a larger section of the society, and also in developing the things that we plan to develop. And more, and also ambassadors for change can suggest us SDGs or specific areas which they want us to work on for their communities, so that they can get privileged access to the data. So a shout out to all artists and techno savvy people, tech engineering students, everyone in this meeting and on YouTube. We start accepting people immediately after this meeting ends. So you can become a part of this community and contribute your bit to this agenda by joining us and helping us grow our initiative. So that's it about the community. Let's move on to our speaker. We have Parth Bhatt. So he is a United Nations alumnus and a young change maker. He has completed a whopping 545 courses from the United Nations Institutes. He has met notably the former president of Afghanistan, Hamid Karzai, Director General of UNESCO, that is United Nations Center for Education, Scientific, Cultural Organization, and also the Chief of Army Staff of India. These are just a few people in his long list. He has done various technological projects aimed towards the sustainable development goals, um, and change making in his own society. So without further ado, I would like Parth to tell us about himself, his journey in his own words, giving what he priors to be the most attention. Over to you, Parth. Please introduce yourself and share us your inspirational journey. Thank you.
All right. So firstly, a very good evening to all of you here. It's a pleasure to be here, and thanks to Community Space One for inviting me for this webinar. So I'm Parth. I am a high school student from India. And other than that, I define myself as a young change maker, as a Gen Z change maker. I have done about more than 550 courses from various United Nations institutes like the United Nations System Staff College and the United Nations Climate Change Learn in Geneva, Switzerland, and various other UN institutes and a few Ivy League universities too. My main aim is to make this world a better place to live in. Coming to my journey, I have been really curious and zealous since the onset of my life. I always tried everything and I tried to explore as much as I could. Even during my primary school days, I used to participate in each and every competition which was organized, be it anything, be it a poem writing competition or an art and craft competition or article writing or anything. One day in 2016, when I was 12 years old, there was an announcement in my school's morning assembly regarding a Model UN conference. I did not have any idea what Model UN was, but still, like as I'm curious and as I wanted to explore more, I gave my name for it. I liked the exposure very much that I did more MUNs after that. At the age of 13, I organized my own international MUN, and it was the city's first MUN to be in support of He for She campaign of the United Nations Women. And then I started chairing MUNs at the same time. At the age of 14, I wanted to explore more. So I left MUNs. Moreover, the quality of MUNs was going down very fast. So in 2018, I left MUNs and I inclined more towards the diplomatic world, diplomatic arena and international relations. So I started with track 2 diplomatic dialogues. Generally, all the track 2 diplomatic dialogues, they have some minimum eligibility criteria like age criteria, qualification criteria, etc. But seeing my knowledge and my performance in the past, exceptions were created for me, especially for my works in sustainable development. In 2017, I initiated a project in Thar Desert in Jodhpur military station. It was related to sustainable development and community upliftment and improvisation of community and transitioning barren desert lands, sandy patches into green parks by using waste and recycled material, for which I was awarded a citation by Wife of Chief of Army Staff. So after my first diplomatic conference, I liked the exposure very much and I tried attending more. I got in touch with diplomats and ambassadors from all around the world. And I attended more diplomatic conferences. Meanwhile, I started doing United Nations courses and enrolling in different United Nations institutions. Then after that, I went to more and more embassies, had more conferences. And then one day in September 2019, I received an invitation for having a dialogue with the Deputy Secretary General of UN, Her Excellency Amina J. Mohammed. I went there, it was quite good. And then I received more invitations. And then I started having presidential meetings and meetings with heads of states and presidents and prime ministers from all around the world. Then after that, during the pandemic, this all transitioned a lot and a lot of things went online. But I would say that it has both positives and negatives. Earlier, for attending any meeting, I had to travel to different places. Everyone had to travel, so the frequency wasn't much. But nowadays, as it has moved online, everyone can attend a lot of meetings and discussions and save both time and the planet by saving the resources which are used while traveling. So that is pretty much about me and my journey in brief.
I have had this query from a long time. I just want to ask, what are those medals for? They look very military, sort of.
All right, so basically these medals are awarded by the United Nations. These are badges which I was awarded for completing the courses and some meetings and other stuff.
Okay, great. So this is really a catalytic journey of yours. tell us a bit about history of sustainability, sustainable development goals, how they compare to other goals of the United Nations, like those existed from 2000 to 2015. That is the MDGs. So yeah, would you?
All right, so the concept of sustainability, though it has come to limelight and it has widespread a lot in past 1 decade, but it isn't alien to us, and it has existed since very long, since the ancient Chinese and Egyptian and Greek civilizations. These civilizations, as they were growing, they faced a lot of issues such as rising temperatures, loss of fertile land, crop failure, heat waves, and reversal of rivers, and a lot of different issues. So this is when the concept of sustainability originated, and it started gaining a bit of momentum. Then then fast forward to the 1700s. We have a lot of literature from Germany in 1700s, which talks about coexistence of humans and the environment, and how preservation of forests and other natural resources is important. And this kept going on. And after that, let's come to World War II now. During World War II, a huge amount of resources were extracted from Earth for wars. And it had a big hit on economy, especially the European countries. And then after that, when the war stopped, the condition, it was getting better. The economic conditions were getting better. The social conditions were getting better. The middle class was becoming larger. But at the same time, the environment was being degraded at a great pace. So in the mid of second half of the 1900s, which is last century, there were a number of conferences like the United Nations Conference on Human Environment and a lot of other conferences where scientists from all around the world were urging the policymakers to make policies which facilitate both environmental and human interests. Till that time, the model which we were following, which is known as the business as usual model, was quite dangerous. And it was predicted that, it was calculated that the Earth will not survive much if we continued at the same pace. So basically, the model which we then transitioned to was economic development first and environmental cleanup after that. But it was meant to fail, and we can see its effects today. Then after that, we had something known as the Brundtland Report, which was again an eye-opener. And then after that, the whole globe, there were many different theories and different methodologies and reports. And the globe, it was, there was this one more report known as the Our Common Future. And after that, the globe was divided into two different hemispheres, the global north and the global south. Like not geographically north or south, but based on the status of the countries. So there is this line, this imaginary line, which passes through the globe, and it passes from below USA, America, and then after that, it passes below Europe. But then after that, it moves upwards above China and below Russia. And then as it moves east, it drops down to below Australia. So geographically, if we see, then India is the north, but according to the global north and global south, India comes in south. And so this line was made. And after that, we had more conferences like the Kyoto conference and the 1992 Rio de Janeiro conference, where the Agenda 21 was discussed and formulated. So Agenda 21 is nothing but kind of a guideline for the governments and the countries to follow in order to be more sustainable. At the same time, we were having conferences for social and economic development too, such as the Millennium Summit, which resulted in the formulation of the Millennium Development Goals, the 8 MDGs, which started in 2001 and ended in 2015. So one thing with these MDGs was that it focused only on the social and economic aspects, but not on the environmental aspects. So there were two different strands. First was the economic strand, which was the Kyoto Conference, the Rio 1992 Conference, the Earth Summit, and the UN Conference on Human Environment. And second one was the social and economic strand, which was about human development, uplifting humans from poverty, education, standards of living, and all. So till 2015, these two strands were different. But in 2012, there was a conference, the Rio Plus 20 conference, which was organized after 20 years of the first Rio conference in 1992, in which these SDGs, in which which was onset of discussion on the SDGs as successor to the MDGs. So the unique thing with sustainable development goals is that it is for the first time that both these strands, they have come together, and SDGs focus on all three aspects of sustainability, which is economic, social, and environmental. So this is how it is different from the MDGs and whatever has happened in past.
Okay, so there's a lot in common between the MDGs and SDGs, like poverty and health, education, but SDGs have a greater emphasis on the environment part of it. In a nutshell, this struggle has been coming along since a long time, as you mentioned, the world wars, because there was a lot of resource depletion during that time. And MDGs, I think, is what has facilitated the SDGs. I would like to ask you, what role does the public play? What role does do the private citizens play here? Like me, then Sidran, you. What role do we play, and the private organizations that have come up, like other think tanks, and more importantly, the nation states of today, that is the countries? What role do they play?
They all play a very major role, because sustainability is something which can't be achieved by a single sector or a single country or a single individual. Everyone, all the countries, and each and every sector has to come together to achieve the Agenda 2030, the SDGs. And everyone plays a major role, each and every individual, regardless of their age or where they come from or any aspect. Everyone plays a major role. And one of the main issues which we are facing today is lack of partnership and lack of coherence. So talking about the Agenda 2030, which is basically United Nations General Assembly Resolution 71, which was passed on 25th of September 2015. There are 5 P's for achieving the Agenda 2030. These 5 P's are people, planet, prosperity, peace, and partnership. Because if we see nowadays, then a lot of wars are happening because of unsustainability and due to scarce resources. Even if we see Africa, then there have been a lot of conflicts just because of resources. So talking about what the different sectors and what individuals can do, there is something on this policy coherence, which means that there should be more transparency and better coordination and better coherence between policies in all the sectors at all levels. Climate change and unsustainability, climate change especially, climate change is, it has both transnational effects and, transboundary effects and intergenerational effects. So it means that whatever happens today, it will affect the future generations, that is the intergenerational effect. And the transboundary effect is, whatever happens in one country, it will affect other country. Like suppose if just for an example, if half of the countries are performing good, they are sustainable, and they are emitting less carbon or or they are carbon neutral, but the other half countries are not, then it is going to affect each and everyone. Like there is no barrier, and climate change affects everyone. Though it affects everyone in a different way based on various factors, it will affect everyone. So now coming to the coherence part. As of now, we see economic development, social development, and environmental development in different silos, and we work on them differently. And this is cause of one of the greatest problems. Like just for example, if we take SDG 8, which is about economic development, and if we take SDG 13, which is about climate action, then if we progress on economic development, then it will for sure have some negative effects on climate action. And if we work on climate action, it will have not very great, but some consequences on economic development in a short span of time. So all the SDGs, they all are interconnected and they are not in silos. Though the world, most of the people, most of the policymakers, most of the governments and countries, they look at it from a silo perspective and work on it differently. They are not. All the SDGs have both synergies and trade-offs. So I'll explain what synergies and trade-offs are. Synergy is basically when two things or two people, or like whenever the output of two organizations or people or two bodies working together is more than their individual sum. Like just for example, suppose there are two students and both of them can write one page a day, then then the sum of their individual work is two. But if they come together and they coordinate in a better way and divide the work, they can write 3 pages. So that is when the sum of, that is when the output, when they come together, is more than the sum of their individual work. So this is synergy. Second is trade-off. So trade-off is basically you can't achieve everything. One of the most common trade-offs is between the quality and the cost. Like things which have better quality generally tend to cost more, and things which cost less do not have that good of quality. So it is inversely proportional. This is trade-offs. So just like this, all the SDGs, they have a lot of links, more than 24,000 links to be specific. So we have to consider that, and we should give up this silo perspective. And like, for example, if we look at food security, then talking about India, we have different ministries working for agriculture, for water, and so we have a lot of different ministries working on different things. But we look at it from silo perspective. Instead of this, we should look at the goal. We should be more goal oriented, which is food security. So this eliminates a lot of trade-offs. And the same is with the sectors also, because both private sector and public sector, they have their own merits and demerits, and their own powers and strengths. And during policy coherence, it is important to bring all the stakeholders to the table, especially the people who are immediately affected by whatever policies are being made, people on the ground. One very big problem today is that the scientific community doesn't have much power. It is more in kind of an advisory role. Like, for example, we have a lot of countries where the scientific community, their scientific communities and scientific advisors are advising them on not to do something, but they're doing it for their economic benefits, and they are sidelining the environmental aspect of it. So scientific community should be given more power. And talking about what can individuals do. So basically nowadays, a lot of us have internet, and we all are aware of a lot of different stuff. We have social media, we have Google, we have Safari, we have different search engines. So we can search about whatever we are doing, what impact it has on the environment, and we can make choices based on that. Like, for example, if we are buying a product which is made by multiple companies, we can find out that which one of them is most sustainable and more green, and we can choose that. Because if we see, then we are the people who make the demand, who affects the demand. And in case if the demand of sustainable products and green products increases, then the supply will increase too, and companies will be forced to transition into more sustainable ways.
Okay, thank you. So I would add something here. Actually, the voice of youth today matters because firstly, they are well informed than the others, because youth is more techno savvy, so they have access to Google News and all these things at their fingertips. So they are well informed, and more importantly, it is their future that is being impacted by the decisions leaders take today. So everyone should voice their opinions against any injustice that they feel. So yeah, I would say public opinion is something very important, and more importantly, youth opinion is something that is more important, because private organizations can connect better to the public than the others, right? So let's move to the main topic of the day: space technology for sustainable development. Give everyone an idea of the main topic, that is space for SDGs, as it is abbreviated by United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs, that is UNUSA. And what is the current global scenario of space for SDGs and SDGs in general? How far have we progressed in terms of space technology for sustainable development goals?
All right, so talking about space, then it has a huge potential for SDGs, mostly in the data gathering and the early warning parts. So the SDGs, they have some indicators, and as of now, there are over 240 indicators. And these indicators are used for for measuring the process, because if we have to make policies, then we need to have data that what is the effect of the previous policies which were implemented and how they have worked. Are they working good? Do they require any amendments? If it is going right, then what part is going right? If something is going wrong, then what part is going wrong? So we need this data. Therefore, data collection is really important. So these indicators, they're divided into 3 tiers: tier 1 indicator, tier 2 indicator, and tier 3 indicator. So tier 1 indicators are indicators for which the data collection mechanisms are there in over 50% of the countries and 50% of the global population. And there's a fixed methodology which is internationally recognized. And then tier 2 data collection, tier 2 indicators are indicators which have a set international methodology, but the mechanisms to collect that data, it is available in less than 50% of the countries or 50% of the global population. Then tier 3 indicators are indicators which have no internationally accepted standardized methodology, which are still being formulated. So as of December 2020, there are no more tier 3 indicators. The last tier 3 indicator was converted into a tier 2 indicator as the methodology was established. So when you talk about data collection, then space technology is something which is really important. Certain organizations of the United Nations, like the World Meteorological Organization and many different organizations, they're quite dependent. Space is quite a scope for them for data collection. It can be used for measuring the green covers and the atmospheric concentrations and whatever is happening geographically, the currents of the oceans, and a lot of different stuff. So this is the data collection part. Second is the early warning part. If I talk about NASA specifically, if I talk about the developed countries specifically, then I would like to give NASA's example. So because of the early warning systems that NASA has developed, the number of patients of malaria has reduced by 500,000. And there's just example of one country and one disease. There are many such examples where early warning systems, which are space technology based, have averted a lot of destruction. Even when it comes to natural calamities and disasters and the Sendai framework, space technology is again quite useful. And it can be used for both warning, early warning, to avert the adversaries and to measure the progress. Two main factors of, two main components, I would rather say, two main components of climate change and sustainable development are adaptation and mitigation. Both should take place at the same time. So adaptation is basically adapting to whatever is happening currently, like rising sea levels, the disruption of food chain, and everything which is happening. Meanwhile, mitigation means making policies and working in such a way today that it results in better tomorrow. So both of these are important. And again, space technology plays a very major role in this. Other than that, there are many other things also. For example, SGG on quality education and connecting people. Here again, spatial technology can play a very major role, because as of now, if we see, then quite a lot of internet, which all of us are getting, comes to deep sea cables. So the thing is that most of the route, most of the route between the net service providers and us is covered by these GC cables. But the problem lies at the end in the remote areas where we can't lay these cables. So there is something known as outer net, which is basically uh, providing internet through satellites. And I guess Elon Musk has already started this initiative known as Starlink, if I'm not wrong, for providing internet through satellites. So by this Starlink and such products and by Outernet and space technology, we can reach more people and give them access to better the information. And this can solve a lot of issues and a lot of problems and result in knowledge development and awareness and a lot of different things. Then the last part, which I would like to cover, is the technologies which are currently in concept, but they have not materialized yet, though they might materialize and we might make them efficiently in future. As of now, they are either we have technological limitations to make them, or they are too expensive to produce in scale. For example, there is this concept of launching solar panels outside the Earth's atmosphere and transmitting energy from there directly to Earth, as the solar light which is there at outside Earth's atmosphere is much more stronger, and it is much more powerful, and it can give much more energy than what we receive at ground today. And so there are many concepts like this, but they are still in discussion. And at the same time, we have something known as geoengineering, which is geoengineering is basically making alterations in Earth's geography and atmosphere through engineering. A very common example of this can be making machines which take in carbon dioxide and give out oxygen and store the carbon. So this is another aspect.
Okay, so thank you for that. I'll give a techno savvy person's perspective here to space for SDGs. Um, Space technology can contribute in most of the domains, as Parth said, even in clean energy, in that particular SDG, it is a futuristic concept, but who would have thought about the solar panel concept booming today, say 50 years back? Who would have thought that it would be so successful today that most of the people would be using solar panels? So even space-based solar power is a concept that is futuristic today, but a few years down the line, it might be the only source of energy for Earth, and it might reduce the global carbon emissions by a tremendous amount, and uh, that will help us increase our sustainability on Earth, and so many things it will contribute to. And even a, a lot of people might be thinking that in decent work and economic growth, how will it contribute there? So there's a very interesting concept. It's not a concept, it's done deal, I would say. So ISRO, Indian Space Research Organization, they have developed this tool known as potential fishing advisory. So it is basically uh, a map that they provide to fishermen, so where they have the data of where there is chlorophyll, and that is identified through remote sensing, because it can easily be seen through satellite imagery and then picked out from the image. So it gives where there's chlorophyll, because where there's chlorophyll there's plants, and where there's plants there's small fishes, and because of small fishes there are large fishes as well, who basically carnivorous fishes. So this will help them increase their productivity, and specific regions to target for the purpose of increasing their productivity. So thank you, Bart. This was really informative, and I thank you for your time. I would like to conclude with a Q&A session with our audience if they have any questions or any comments, any ideas they might have. And then we'll move on to a few ending remarks from your side. So anyone who has any question, please do raise your hands. We are looking forward to a very fruitful debate today. Thank you. Any questions, anyone? Yeah. Just a second, Navash. I will unmute you. Yeah, you can unmute yourself.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
But sir, I would actually like to I really like this session with you, and I would like to ask you a question that after World War II, means the world's, we can say, the status was really poor. So how did you overcome that problem? How did you maintain the balance between the economic growth and the scientific growth after World War II?
So you mean to ask that how a world could have maintained the development, or why it didn't happen?
Yeah.
What are you asking exactly? Are you asking that why it didn't happen, or how it could have happened, or how the economic growth was achieved?
Yeah, means how did the after World War II, how did means the we can say the effects of the war that affected on the countries, how did they overcome that?
All right, so you're asking that how did we pull so many people out of poverty, and how did we develop economically, right?
Yeah.
All right, so after World War II, Europe's economy, like most of the European countries, they were totally devastated, and a lot of people were pushed into poverty. And we extracted tons of resources, megatons of resources from Earth for building tens of thousands of aircraft, ships, tanks, etc. Like if you see the losses of the countries in World War II, the number of tanks, aircraft, ships, and other equipments lost, it's in tens of thousands. So a lot of resource extraction was there, and after that, it resulted in a lot of economic destruction, especially in Europe. So after this, USA, United States of America, initiated something known as the Marshall Plan. So it was basically a mechanism which for providing economic assistance to the European nations. And later it was a basis of the OECD, which we see today. OECD is Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. So when we were doing this all, there was a lot of economic growth, but we at the same time we extracted a lot of resources from the environment. And talking about how we push people out of poverty, then there's a notion nowadays that economic development is good and economic development is most important and all, and there should be economic development. This all is there is because if we see in the later half of 1900s, then economic development was there. It did push people out of poverty, but it wasn't the economic development alone. It was also the government policies and a lot of different factors which people didn't really see. So that's why we have this societal conditioning that economic development is good and it will help us.
Vayush, does that answer your question? Any follow-up question from your side, or anyone else has any questions? Anyone? Okay, so the next question is from my mentor. She has written in the chat. So, okay, just a second, Navash. I will. You can unmute yourself now.
Yeah, thank you. I got the answer. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Next question is, can you guide how other children can enroll into UN courses and grow in this in these terms?
All right. So basically, like you won't find it all at one place. There are many different institutions of United Nations and non-UN institutes which offer courses on different things, different areas looked after by the United Nations. And So there are different types of courses, both online and offline, and some courses are open for all. Some have some eligibility criterias, and some are only selection based. So there are a number of courses. So it depends on what you want to search for. Like, for example, if you want to if you want to do courses on peacekeeping, then there is something known as the Peace Operations Training Institute, which is basically a non-UN organization in USA, but it has partnered with a lot of centers of United Nations for peacekeeping, and it offers courses on international law and peacekeeping and the gender disparities in areas of conflict and a lot of other things. Similarly, there is something known as United Nations Women Training Center, which offers courses on all the areas looked after by the United Nations Women. And so like this, a lot of different agencies, they have their own courses. And yeah, so that's all. Like it depends on which area you want to follow.
Okay, thank you for that answer. Does
Also,
anyone have any other
one more thing,
question,
one more point
any
which I wanted to,
comment, any
one
suggestion,
more,
anything?
one point which I wanted to add in that there is something known as UNITAR, UNITAR, which is United Nations Institute for Training and Research. You can find quite good courses there.
Okay, so I don't think there's anything else. There's anyone else who has any question? Saicharan, over to you.
Well, yes, I'd just like to quickly wrap things up with some closing remarks and a vote of thanks to everyone who's made this possible. So, as all of us know, the United Nations has produced the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, which includes 17 Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs, that Parth has spoken about in great detail today. The UN and its member states use Earth observation and geolocation to assist in the attainment of these development goals. However, we at Community Space One believe that space has a considerably larger role to play in achieving these SDGs. We believe that the potential of space technologies have not been fully utilized yet, and so call upon all of you tonight to join us at Community Space One on this journey to develop new space technologies and applications of space technologies. Our website is spacecommunity.org. Please log into the website and send us your application form if you're interested. Finally, I'd like to end by thanking Bhatt for joining us today and educating us about sustainable development goals. My special thanks to Joy Agrawal as well for starting all of this and making this possible. Last but not least, all of you, thank you for joining us this evening. Thank you very much. Your participation is really appreciated.
Thank you.